Are you aware that a girl was found murdered in Frankston?
Yeah.
Today being Saturday?
Yeah.
When did you first become aware of that?
Well, I saw some police cars and everything when I was driving up Sky Road this morning, and SES workers.
So you saw SES workers and all that in Sky Road?
Yeah. And they had some white tape across the walkway. And I saw you.
Sorry, you saw me?
Yeah, I saw you, and I saw the other guy.
And that was, what were you doing when you saw that? Where were you going, or what were you doing?
Oh, we were going up to the wreckers.
He seemed to be able to have an answer for every occasion, where he was, what he did, which certainly gave rise to suspicion because nobody has that sort of recall, in my view.
Yeah.
More disturbingly, Paul Denyer could recall every minute of every hour on the very days that Elizabeth, Debbie and Natalie were murdered.
Yesterday, your car was parked opposite the location where the body of Natalie Russell was found. On the night that Debbie Freem disappeared, you walked over to Kennedall Railway Station, missed the train and walked back. And on the night Elizabeth Stevens disappeared, you walked in a very close proximity to Lloyd Park on your way to pick up this battery. Do you think that's fairly coincidental?
Yeah, it is.
In all the circumstances?
Yeah.
Are you responsible for the deaths of any of these women?
No.
Police were continuing to interview their prime suspect, Paul Charles Denyer. Not only was his car in close proximity to the murder scene of Natalie Russell, but his flat contained evidence that linked him to that scene. His hands also had suspicious cuts.
A sample of your blood is requested for the purpose of confirming or disproving your involvement in these matters.
We asked Paul for a blood sample and a sample of other tissue so we could establish a match between skin found at the post-mortem of the Russell victim and himself, so we could tie him to the murder.
All right, we're just going to suspend the interview for a short time. Is there anything else you want, like a cup of coffee or a glass of water?
Yeah, I would like another cup of coffee. Yeah.
How do you have your coffee?
White with two.
All right, I'll get you a cup of coffee, all right? Just have a short break.
At that particular time when he was sitting there, he was starting to realise now that blood samples were being requested and the DNA may link him to the scenes, and he knew that we didn't believe any of his story.
Do you think that's fairly coincidental?
Yeah, it is.
In all the circumstances?
Yeah.
I think he knew that the game was up, so to speak, and whilst we're waiting for our forensic experts to come and take various samples, Detective Darren O'Loughlin was looking after Paul, and Darren was wearing a cross that you could see through his shirt, and Paul asked him if he was a Christian, and conversation ensued about that.
You spoke to Detective O'Loughlin here, and you told Detective O'Loughlin that you were responsible for the murders of the three women. Is that correct? Just tell us in your own words, Paul, what happened in relation to the death of Elizabeth Stevens at Langwarrin.
I saw her get off the bus. I walked up behind her, stuck my left hand around her mouth like this and held a gun to her head right here. I started choking her with my hands, and she passed out after a while. And then I pulled out the knife.
Okay.
And I dragged her to where she was found. Then I threw 2 branches on her body.
Can you tell me why you attacked her on that night?
Just had the feeling, that's all.
What sort of feeling? Can you possibly describe where you had this feeling?
Just wanted to kill.
Once he'd made the decision to admit the offence, he was, he didn't hold back anything. You could see that he was very willing to recount everything that had occurred.
Yeah.
Okay, can you tell us what happened here?
Well, the car was sitting over there.
This is Debbie Freem's car we're talking about.
Yeah, Pulsar.
Right,
I was walking down this road here.
right,
Saw her jump out of the car.
yes.
Ran into the milk bar here. So I jumped in the back seat of the car.
Right.
And the car was directly across the road, so I could see her from inside the car in there.
What caused you to select her at that time?
Just that go feeling.
Right. So what happened then?
And then she came out. While I was crouched down, I could hear her footsteps coming closer to the car.
Mm-hmm.
And she hopped in the car, but she didn't see me in the back. And she went to do a U-turn, pulled out the gun that I had. Just as she was doing that turn, she kept going straight into this wall.
What did you hit?
It could be there. Which caused a dent on the bonnet.
Right.
And then you drove off down this Cannock Avenue?
Yeah, down that way.
He was totally removed from the circumstances of what occurred. It's like it didn't happen for him. He was explaining it outside himself.
He then took Debbie to Taylor's Road, where he strangled and then killed her with a knife, like he did with Elizabeth Stevens.
I dragged her about a metre into the trees and where she was lying against the fence.
Yeah.
And I broke off 2 branches off the nearest tree and threw them over her body. And I hopped back in the car again and I adjusted the seat to match my height because she was a lot smaller than me. And headed back Madden Street.
Why to Madden Street?
Wasn't too close, wasn't too far from home.
The next morning, just as witnesses described, Paul Denyer went back to Debbie's car and grabbed her groceries and purse.
I wanted to see what her name was and everything out of her wallet, so
Right.
I took it up to the golf course and buried it.
So you'd be able to show us where that is?
Exactly.
Okay, would you be able to find the spot?
Alright, I'll find it.
You've brought us up the track to this point where you've just kindly cut the fence open for us.
Yep.
And this is the area in here where you've indicated the purse is.
Yes.
He's digging around and, really we could have just said, relax, Paul. It'll be here. If you say it's here, it'll be here, But he was frantically digging because it was like we weren't going to believe him.
I should have a shovel.
Just hold it there. Just shake it with the mud off if you can, mate. So that's the location where you buried the purse?
Yep.
And who does that purse belong to?
Debbie Freem.
I'll put it in the bag.
3 weeks later, he returned to the track.
Yep.
What can you tell me about this?
I went up there earlier that day and cut the holes in the fences.
What did you use to cut the holes in the fences?
Pair of pliers. I stood here and watched Natalie Russell walk around the corner. And then I went through this hole and waited behind the trees there
Right.
until I saw her walk past here and heading that way.
Right.
And when she got about 10 metres down the track here, I came out of the fence.
As we're walking along here, are you still maintaining that distance behind her?
No, I was getting closer each time. I walked along the grass like this, wouldn't make a sound.
So you wouldn't be heard?
Yeah. I was armed with a red-handled knife
Where'd that come from?
from my place.
Is that all you had?
Yeah.
Just a red-handled knife?
Oh, and a leather strap. You would have found it at the scene, in 2 pieces.
What was that used for?
Strangling.
What was that from?
There was a strap off a pair of binoculars I had at home. I grabbed her here around the mouth,
Yeah.
with the left hand, like this.
Yeah.
I dragged her through here.
Absolutely no remorse for what he did. The candour of his confessions were chilling, and the way he was able to describe what he'd done to these poor victims without any sort of emotion, it was quite an amazing journey.
What did you want to kill her for?
Same reason as before. No, I've always wanted to kill.
Since when?
Since I was about 14.
Apart from his callous descriptions of the 3 murders, he also admitted to assaulting Rosa Toth on the same night as he killed Debbie Freem.
This is some weeks after Elizabeth Stevens.
Yeah, I was just, like every day, I was just going up, boiling up, till I got to that stage.
Were you armed with the same weapon?
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same weapon? Was that the weapon you used when you first approached Elizabeth Stevens?
Yeah, that's the one.
And the same with Deborah Freem?
Yep.
Same as the woman at Seaford Railway Station?
Yep.
If that lady hadn't have got away, what would have happened to
I
her?
would have killed her.
Rosa wasn't the only lucky one.
I've been stalking women for a few years
Right.
in Frankston. Just waiting for that opportunity,
Right.
waiting for the sign.
Right.
Paul Denya's confession had lasted just over 5 hours.
21-year-old unemployed man Paul Charles Denyo was charged at the Frankston police station at 9 o'clock this morning. The station was under tight security as Denyo was driven away in a divisional van escorted by a second police car.
It was funny, he copped the fucking arrow and went straight in his fucking heart. Anyway, it was really funny. You should have seen his face, right? There he is. He's just fucking, he's there, and all of a sudden he just goes, he starts making this like a death noise sort of thing. You can't fucking believe that's happening. It's real funny, he just like, he's completely spun out. It's like, oh fuck, I can't believe it's come to this.
The account given in that tape certainly indicated a state of mind that was far more calculating, far more callous than the shocked, affronted, almost apologetic account that he gave in his record of interview at Manly.
And I realised that this guy's dead, and so I spin out and I grabbed the guy's legs and I pulled him over to Deep Creek. And then he sank down into the water, and then I picked up my bow and like ran a few steps to get momentum, and I threw it into the water.
And then of all things, he went to his mother's birthday party. After the party, he came back to Deep Creek with his trident boning knife. And in the middle of the night, he sat in Deep Creek and dismembered Mr. Dempsey's remains.
I took out the knife, and it was very bright. I think I remember the moon. It wasn't full. It was pretty close to it. But it was a bright night, and I took the knife and I cut into the leg, and I cut around the leg, and then I cut up into the joint. I used to work in an abattoir.
Yeah.
So I don't think unless I'd worked in this place, and I don't think I would have been able to do what I did.
He then put the limbs and the head in one bag and the torso in the other, and then did 2 separate trips on his motorcycle and took them back to where he was living. And he put the remains in his refrigerator where they were to stay for the next 3.5 months.
I just took everything out of the fridge and put everything in there, including his clothes.
On August the 2nd, 1994, Richard Leonard shot Stephen Dempsey with a bow and arrow. He then dismembered the body and put the remains in his fridge. 2 weeks later, the killer began a relationship with 18-year-old Denise Shipley.
I said, there is a person in the bed. And she was quite shocked.
The two had known each other some years before when they attended the same church group. 4 years later, they discovered a mutual love of drugs and violence. And on the 17th of November 1994, that combination proved lethal.
The two went into the city, allegedly then under the influences of LSD. They've wandered around the city.
And we eventually found ourselves in Hyde Park, and then we decided we'd go home again. I only had enough money to catch a bus back, but Denise really wanted to get the taxi, so I said, okay, well, we'll get the taxi, but you realise it means we're going to have to get out and run away. So we got into this cab, and the driver was, what's his name?
The driver's name was Mr. Ezzedine Barmad.
Ezzedine Barmad.
Yes.
So the driver was Ezzedine Barmad. He said, where do you want to go? I said, well, we want to go to Colorado Plateau.
He's then told us that he's didn't have the money to pay the fare, so he's pulled a knife out and put it to Mr. Barmad's throat. The way he describes it as just being, well, he didn't know what else to do.
I pulled out my knife from the inside pocket of my Nudgy jacket and put the point of the knife to the driver's neck. And said, don't move. At the time I said, don't move, he grabbed the knife out of my hand, and then everything got completely insane.
Mr. Barmad's grabbed the knife from him, they've struggled, and he's been able to stab him once to the chest.
And I got stabbed in the chest through my jacket.
By Mr. Barmad.
By Mr. Barmad.
Richard Leonard, who was a fairly strong bloke, has been able to grab the knife and has just, in a frenzy, attacked Mr. Barmad.
And I was wildly stabbing as I was trying to get into the front on top of him, and was stabbing everywhere.
What hand did you have the knife in?
Would have been my right hand, and my knife was very sharp. So I had a steel that I used, and I always had my knife sharp. It was my favourite knife. Mm-hmm. And it actually cost me $90, that knife. And so you could get a tomato and slice it like a razor blade. It was really good.
At some stage during the struggle, Leonard left his calling card on the steering wheel. His fingerprints were confirmed as being the ones investigators found on the ignition key.
After receiving treatment at St Vincent's Hospital, Leonard and Shipley have returned home and realised that there could be some activity relative to the police, and they've then decided to discard Mr Dempsey's remains. They've driven to Church Point, where we found the receipt where they hired the boat from the boat shed, little runabout, little tinny.
So did they come down here in the boat?
Yes.
She crashed in the sandbag somewhere around here, you indicated. What did you do then?
I got her to go for a walk, and I carried two parcels in sheets down and put them into the boat with wire ties and a pair of pliers.
And what were those two parcels you were referring to?
They were the remains of Mr. Dempsey.
Leonard's pulled some rocks from the shore, put those in the boat, and as he's made his way into Pittwater, he's wired the rocks to the torso.
There's only one thing I know I can absolutely say is as a fact, and that was that there was no residential dwellings in the place where I stopped, and I drifted. So, to my mind, logic, I would say that I stopped here.
He's thrown the remains over the side of the boat and then returned the boat, cleaned the boat out, and they've gone home.
3 weeks later, the torso surfaced and Leonard's perfect crime came undone.
Without that arrowhead, there's a very good possibility without an admission of guilt from somebody that we never ever would have solved it, because it was the one piece of evidence that led us to the offender.
Richard Leonard's trial for the murder of Stephen Dempsey lasted 12 days.
The court was told how, as a child, Leonard had spent his school holidays with his grandmother, chopping off the ears and tails of little kittens. And when he ran out of kittens to mutilate, his grandmother would just buy him more.
It's always nail-biting, waiting for a jury to return. In this case, the jury was out for 4 days. The team were on edge. But more than anything, I think we really felt for the family of the 2 victims on this occasion. It was very, very tough for them.
The judge described Richard William Leonard as the epitome of evil.
Richard Leonard is only 24 years old, but a judge has decided he must spend the rest of his life in prison for killing New Zealander Stephen Dempsey and taxi driver Esdean Barmard.
We're very happy.
We're very happy.
Yeah, thank you.
Family friends of the taxi driver stabbed 37 times by Leonard 3 years ago, so the life imprisonment is deserved.
I love to see him, suffer, like us, like the children he left behind.
In sentencing Leonard, Justice Badgery Parker said imposing life imprisonment was a very serious step, but the fact that Richard Leonard had killed 2 people and been diagnosed as a psychopath meant he'd always be a risk to the community.
His girlfriend, Denise Shipley, was sentenced to a minimum of 3 years and a maximum of 8 for her involvement as an accessory after the fact to both murders.
He told me about a certain murder that he did, and it gave me nightmares. And that's when I thought, well, maybe this is a bit more than just being a crime in a jail. Maybe I should do something about it. So I contacted the police and the operation began.
With the cooperation of Mr. Brown, we were able to capture a lot of these conversations about all these unsolved murders going back many years on an authorised listening device tape.
I lay awake many nights thinking about it and thinking about the consequences and whether I'd be able to do it or not. And I couldn't find a reason not to.
I think in total there was mention of 14 separate murders. Some of them were gangland related, some of them were drug rip-offs, and some of them were revenge killings.
One of them was the murder of Harvey Jones.
Yeah, I know. I sort of still think I don't even know how it.
Mr. Brown ran a very high risk. One word out of place, Nellie was not stupid completely. If he just said the wrong thing, well, he would have been in fairly grim straits.
I was thinking, shit, I hope he doesn't hear the tape recorder. That's about all I was thinking. Yeah.
But he persevered and he teased a lot of detail, a lot of information from Nettie.
I said, you'll get out there, you fuck, I'm not. It's really hard, I think 3 by 7.
What did you kill him for? What do you have to go for?
What do I know all these things for? You're going to write a book, you can't.
No, I'm just interested, that's all. In a lot of ways, it seemed to me that the only reason that he killed Harvey was because Harvey annoyed him. I never met Harvey, but from what I did find out about him, it seemed that he was a bit of a party boy. He went over the top a few times, but he certainly didn't deserve to pay for it with his life, for no more than upsetting the bloke. But that's how things were back then.
To use his words, he elsewhere in the book indicates that most big-time criminals come undone because of their mouth and they tell too many people too many things. And here is he falling for the same trap. The tapes themselves would have allowed us to go out and charge Nettie forthwith, but that would have been quite foolish to do it because any brief that hinges on a confession per se, well, wouldn't get past first base. And you'd just be wasting your time. It'd be nothing worse than charging Nettie than watching him walk.
What they needed was a body. And for months, they searched the area mentioned by Neddy on the tapes.
I've flown over, I've driven over, I've walked through. I knew it better than I really wanted to, but I didn't find Harvey Jones. A man walking his dog found Harvey Jones.
I was watching the news and it said how a bloke had been walking his dog along the beach at Botany and found human remains. And it was pretty much where Neddy had said it was on the tape. And I said, I bet that's Harvey Jones.
My first impressions was, well, here's one brief for Ned.
And Neddy had given them a challenge.
So the trouble is, if they find the skeleton, they can check who they are.
Somewhere in those remains hopefully would give us that linkage back to Neddy Smith and confirm what was on the tapes.
He thought he'd got away with it cold. He thought he'd be right, for sure.
Here we had a person who was sticking his thumbs up at society in general and saying, I've got away with this. And that was our challenge, to make sure, well, you just can't do these things and get away with it. And that was our challenge then, to make sure that we put him away and he paid the price for what he's done.
Police had secretly taped Neddy Smith in his jail cell, confessing to the murder of his friend Harvey Jones. And was confident he'd got away with it.
So the trouble is, if they find the skeleton, they can check who they are.
We had no doubts that Harvey Jones had been murdered by Neddy, but the standard of proof in the courts for a charge of murder is extremely high, and it's beyond reasonable doubt, not just that you think it was him. Neddy, unfortunately, had been locked up for some time and didn't appreciate the value of forensics. He had been locked away, he felt that sense of security. A lot of time had elapsed. He would think that there'd be nothing to tie him back into the crime scene or the crime.
The first step in the process was to establish whether the projectiles found at the post-mortem were fired from a .357 revolver, as Neddy had stated.
There was not a lot of evidence presented to us ballistics-wise. Usually when we go to crime scenes, we'll have a body, we'll have fired cartridge cases, we'll have the smoking gun, so to speak. In this case, we had none of that, except the recovery of the 2 bullets, which were heavily corroded and badly damaged as well. If we recover a bullet under normal circumstances and it's in quite good condition, we will weigh the projectile, we'll measure the projectile, the diameter of it with calipers. We'll also look at those individual markings on the bullet, those lands and grooves, and we can do that by looking at it under a microscope, which will give us an indication of what type of firearm could possibly have been used. What we're looking at here is the surface of the bullet, the side view, and we're actually looking at one of the landmarks on the bullet to make an identification. The problem in this case was that we could only identify one partial landmark on each of the bullets. However, even though the examination was limited, we went to our reference material, did some firing of some weapons out of our library and found the 2 bullets, both consistent with being fired from a .38 caliber .357 revolver.
It was encouraging evidence, but the task force would need further proof. Neddy had claimed he had used the .357 and blew out Harvey's heart.
The x-rays were very helpful and showed a number of fractures in ribs of the chest cavity, undoubtedly fractured by a gunshot. There were shards of projectile around the fracture line, indicating that a projectile had entered the chest, probably from the front, in all likelihood striking the heart and/or lungs.
But even that wasn't enough for this team of detectives led by John Laycock. For them, it was a matter of crossing all T's and dotting all I's.
I don't like just to put the bales on top of the stumps. I like to belt the stumps right in, so as there's no room for any movement. We're playing A grade here. This is a first-class crook, if I can use those terms. and it was going to be a fight to the end. So we didn't want to leave anything open to any suggestion that it wasn't so.
It could be easily seen as a get square. They had to overcome that, and therefore everything they did had to be very much above board.
We were on the right track. We just had to keep on going to really tighten the noose around his neck and give him no room to move. If you raced out, you'd muck it up, and you'd never forgive yourself if you walked.
To further support our theory, we sent one of Harvey's ribs down to an expert in Melbourne. What we needed to know was there any traces of lead on these ribs?
I was basically asked by New South Wales Police to have a look at some bones. There was some visible damage to one of the rib bones, and they wanted to know if this damage was caused due to a gunshot or some other form of damage that could have occurred while the body was buried in the sand. The damage was cone-shaped, which is very typical of bullet damage. But then there was obviously a matter of actually proving it, not just giving an opinion.
To do that, the bone was put into a scanning electron microscope so that any particles on the rib could be detected and analysed. Various heavy metals show up as various images.
Material that has a high atomic number basically shows up as a bright particle. So things like iron and lead, you get quite bright images.
And lead has its own unique shape and form.
A pattern is produced, and that pattern corresponds to lead. In this case, both lead and calcium was detected. The calcium comes from the bones. So the material that was actually on the bones was in fact lead. The finding of lead on the bone and around the damage confirms that a lead projectile, a bullet, caused that damage.
Even more damning evidence was found from the clothes Harvey was wearing on the night he was murdered.
When I started examining the cardigan and the shirt, I had to distinguish between decay and forensic evidence. I located what I believe to be a projectile hole on the cardigan, midway up on the nylon section of the zipper. Now, the remainder of the zipper was totally intact bar this one area.
Harvey's shirt also had a distinctive hole.
We were able to determine that the fabric had been doubled over when the projectile had been fired. When you overlay the two pieces of fabric, it becomes a perfectly circular hole. The holes were measured for diameter. Both the holes in the right chest area were consistent with being either a .38 calibre projectile or a .357 calibre projectile. The most crucial piece of forensic evidence that was obtained from the clothing was the fact that the holes in the jumper in the front right chest area matched the holes in the shirt in the right chest area, and we were clearly able to establish a bullet trajectory from entering the cardigan, through the shirt, and actually striking a rib in Harvey's chest.
We're on a winner. We're on a conviction. We knew it.
The forensic case linking Nettie Smith to the murder of Harvey Jones was strong. Not only had the experts proven the skeleton in the sandhills was Harvey, but they were able to prove that he had been shot, and the weapon was most likely a .357 revolver. When those bullets exited the gun, they made a perfect and traceable trajectory through his cardigan and shirt, hitting a rib in his chest. Police now had the forensic evidence they needed to match the words used by Nettie in their secretly taped recordings. Also in the confession was the mention of a man who was with Nettie on the night Harvey was killed, a man who police would call Mr. Green.
He'd originally been spoken to by police and was uncooperative. However, when the body was found, it firmed up certain information that we'd been given, and he became cooperative with the police.
Mr. Green was a driver or a gopher for Nettie Smith in those years, and he told us the whole story. On the night of the 15th of July 1983, according to Mr. Green, he went to the Star Hotel in Alexandria, where he met Nettie and Harvey Jones. There was some discussion about Mr Green making some money that night. So they all got into a van and Nettie directed them to drive to the vicinity of Botany. They alighted from the car and Nettie Smith and Harvey Jones went for a walk down to the beach. Mr Green stayed behind on Nettie's instructions to keep a lookout. A short time later, there was a gunshot and Harvey had been shot by Nettie. He walked down to the beach and he saw Harvey lying on the ground. Nettie was standing over the top of him with a gun in his hand. Mr Green was then directed by Nettie to dig a hole, which he did. There was a shovel obtained from the van. He dug a fairly deep hole and the body was placed into that hole, and they then left the scene and went back that night to the Star Hotel and just continued on business. Now, that by itself is pretty damning evidence, but it's a man's word and it's open to dispute. You'd probably have to look at possible motives and his background. So it's a question of how much weight you would place on it per se. But put together as a package with the tapes, the crime scene, the forensics, it certainly left no gap that Nettie could punch holes in when it got to court. So it just helped tie everything together.
Colourful Sydney identity Nettie Smith has appeared in court, charged with murdering an underworld figure 15 years ago.
Arthur Nettie Smith under tight security to face trial for the gangland killing of brothel owner Harvey Jones. It's 15 years to the day since he was executed with 2 gunshot wounds to the chest. He was then buried in sand dunes along Botany Bay. Police claim Smith lured Jones to the beach to get $60,000, allegedly to pay off corrupt detective Roger Rogerson for getting Jones off a criminal charge. His body was undiscovered for 13 years. Prosecutors say Smith confessed to the crime. He was secretly recorded boasting about how he got away with it.
The Defence Counsel consented to those tapes being admitted into evidence without contest. So the only defence that Nettie would have was say I was boasting or telling lies or what have you.
His explanation, in his words, were, I'm talking crap.
It's pretty accurate crap for someone that's talking crap.
He was saying that he was testing Mr Brown, seeing if he told him this story, he heard it back on the prison grapevine. And he says that did in fact happen.
There's been a day of courtroom drama as alleged hitman Nettie Smith came face to face with a cellmate who informed on him.
Looking back now, I think it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, but at the time it seemed very, very simple, very easy. I got nervous, before court, just like anyone else, I suppose, and like talking in public and that. But and probably because I was telling the truth in the court, so it didn't really matter that much. I just had to go and tell the truth, so I didn't have to worry about keeping stories together or anything like that.
The trial, that included evidence from Mr Brown and all the forensic experts, lasted 2 months.
Even with all the evidence and with our confidence, you can never estimate what a jury would or would not do. The jury was out for about 3 or 4 days, which was a very torturous process.
Was there something we'd missed? Was there going to be a legal technicality to be thrown up by the jury and either a hung jury, which would have involved a retrial, or, God forbid, to be acquitted?
Sydney's most notorious gangster will spend the rest of his life in prison. Arthur Nettie Smith was found guilty of murder.
He was first jailed for theft at the age of 15. Now he's convicted of killing brothel owner Harvey Jones. Justice Carolyn Simpson said Smith showed no remorse or contrition. She said the murder was premeditated, cold-blooded and deliberate. Jones had become a nuisance to him.
It also proves that our legal system does work, even on a 15-year-old murder. And more importantly, I suppose, for Harvey Jones, even though he was a scandal, his 80-year-old mum will now have some peace in the final years.
Already serving a life sentence for killing a tow truck driver, Smith was eligible for parole within weeks. The Jones verdict finishes that.
Nettie was charged with a total of 7 murders arising from those prison tapes. 4 were dismissed at committal. He was acquitted by a jury for another, and when police won this case, they decided not to proceed with the 7th.
Detectives are waiting for the results of blood tests on a young man who said he found his family murdered in their home near Wollongong. Matthew DeGrucci and his father Wayne underwent the tests at a local hospital as they continue to help police investigate the triple murder.
The advantage of DNA is in the ability to discriminate quite easily between different individuals. Here we have a family, and I was able to easily distinguish through simple DNA testing the different people in the family, even though we were talking about a related group of individuals.
Dr. Gertz had received dozens of swabs from the house and needed to distinguish whose blood was whose, and whose was potentially the killer's.
Most of the blood matched that of the deceased, but the blood staining that was on the back of Jennifer's bed and the blood staining down the hallway had DNA that matched that of Matthew DeGrucci and not any other member of his family.
But how did Matthew's blood get there? His girlfriend Alyssa told police she had seen no injuries on him on the night of the murders.
Because Matthew had said he'd gone to his girlfriend's place, we then, as part of the investigation, obviously we spoke to his girlfriend. We were able to piece together a bit of a timeline.
Hey, Alyssa.
The police knew the couple had spoken with each other at 8 p.m.
He'd made an arrangement with her to attend there that evening, and he hadn't arrived, and so she made a phone call back to the DeGrucci household to speak to Matthew, and that was around 10 o'clock. That phone call went unanswered, so after that she went to bed. She wasn't aware if Matt was still coming up or not.
Although Matthew had said to his girlfriend that he would be there soon, he didn't arrive until 11 p.m. Some 3 hours after speaking with her.
He went into the house and he just told her that the reason he'd been delayed is because his mother had asked him to stay back because they'd received some crank phone calls. He'd said that one of the persons that had sent the crank call said to him, there'll be 3 members of your family dead.
Matthew had never told police at any time that his family had been threatened on the night they were murdered. So to confirm Alyssa's statement, investigators would need to check the telephone records of the DeGrucci household to uncover the truth.
We were able to establish telephone calls that had been made because we were able to go back and speak to people that made those calls. However, the telephone calls that Matthew mentioned to his girlfriend about people ringing and making the threats, we weren't able to establish if that had actually taken place. If that had happened, do you think it was one of the first things that would have been said to us?
Well, this is an electronic recorded interview between Detective Sergeant DJ Sharkey and Matthew Wayne DeGrucci. When the call's made, I'll just try and clarify myself. The phone rings, you pick the phone off out of the cradle. How long a time after picking the phone up does the line stay open?
When you just hear the beeps.
So, are you saying that they hang up as soon as you pick the phone up? Is that what happens?
Well, as soon as you pick the phone up to put it to your ear, you just hear the beeps.
We were trying to establish whether the calls had connected. We were asking him, had he taken the call? We were asking questions along the lines of, did you hear anything? Was there beeping to show that the call had connected?
So you're saying that they become aware as soon as it's a connection, and then they hang up, is that right?
Well, I guess so, yes.
If that story had been true, Matthew would have had to have heard someone say that to him, and there would have had to been a connection on the telephone line, and there wasn't.
Had Matthew killed his mother, brother and sister? And if so, what was the possible motive?
Has there ever been an occasion in the past where you've had an argument with your mother over the use of the car?
Matthew de Grucci's fingerprints and blood had been found at the crime scene. He told police that he had stayed at his girlfriend's on the night of the murders, arriving there late because of crank calls that had come into the de Grucci house. But when police checked, there was no record of them. Police were continuing to interview their prime suspect, this time about the discovery of the bodies.
Now, in the statement you made last Wednesday, 13th, you spoke to the detective and he recorded in the statement about when you arrived home. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Well, can you just go over that again for me, please?
I arrived home at about 8:30, 8:35.
Hello?
Matthew told the police he returned home that morning to grab his wallet that he'd forgotten he'd left there, and then headed straight down to the local shops.
In the statement you say that you left the house and then went to get some cigarettes. Is that correct? Well, it doesn't record a nod. You're going to have to say yes or no.
Yes.
And then you returned to the house. Is that correct?
Yes, after the shop.
And that's what it says in your statement that you made that day, that you came back to the house from the shop after purchasing the cigarettes.
Yeah.
Well, what did you do then?
Opened the front door, walked inside, I went to the kitchen, realised it was quiet. I went back down the hallway, sort of hit Sarah's door. Just didn't really worry about it, and then opened my mum's door.
What did you do then?
Realised about me mum.
Did you... What happened then?
Well, I didn't know what had happened, so it was, breakdown and all that. Ran outside, and then just to find help, and then I saw Steve across the road.
There's something wrong with Mum and Sarah.
In the statement obtained from Steve Bailey, he says that Matthew came out and said there's something up with Mum and Sarah.
There's something wrong with Mum and Sarah.
When interviewing Matthew, we spoke to him about what he did when he entered the house, and we specifically put it to him, did you go to your sister's bedroom?
Did you go to the lounge room at that time at all?
No.
Now, on that occasion, did you go to the dining room?
No.
Did you go to the kitchen?
No.
Did you go to your sister's bedroom?
When put to him, did he go into Sarah's bedroom? He said he didn't. If he hadn't have gone in there, how did he know that something happened to Sarah?
Now, you drove to Alyssa's place, that's correct?
Yeah.
And you arrived there sometime around 11, is that correct?
Yeah.
And that's what you said in your previous statement?
Yeah.
Whereabouts did you... and you drove your mother's car, is that correct?
Yeah.
Matthew had used the family car on occasions and put a lot of kilometres on it, so we've been told. And as such, the family had decided that he could use his father's car, his father's work vehicle. Normally, Matthew's father would have been home on that evening, but that day he'd been staying in Sydney, and as such, Matthew couldn't use his father's car. So he had to use his mother's vehicle to travel.
Matthew was therefore the last person who had access to the car on the night of the murders.
Has there ever been an occasion in the past where you've had an argument with your mother over the use of the car?
I wouldn't call it an argument.
I asked Matthew in an interview if there'd ever been any arguments over his use of his mother's vehicle, and he said, well, I wouldn't call them arguments, but we'd had received information that there had been some dispute between Matthew and his mother over the use of the car.
Has there ever been an occasion when your mother has declined your use of the car and you have threatened her with any physical force?
No.
Has there ever been an occasion where you've assaulted your mother?
No.
So Matthew was given the opportunity to confess to his involvement.
That concludes the interview.
He didn't take that opportunity.
Oh, no.
We allowed him to leave the police station. Then we went about our work to gather the evidence to show that he was the person that committed those crimes.
Without any witnesses, the detectives and forensic investigators would need to put together a whole jigsaw of circumstantial evidence. They already had Matthew's fingerprints on the jerry can, and they had found his blood in the house. And Matthew had been the last person to use his mother's car.
I received a carpet fibre that was found in the back of Jennifer DeGrucci's car. The fibre was about 3 centimetres long, and what was interesting about it was right at the end of it was a small red-brown stain. Because it was so small, there wasn't a lot of testing we could do with it, so what we did was we cut a small amount of that staining off and put it into a tube to pursue it with DNA testing. The tests on the carpet fibre found that the DNA could not have come from anybody in the family but Matthew DeGrucci.
That fibre had matched the carpet fibres in Jennifer's room, and police speculated how Matthew's blood came to be there.
He possibly could have bled as a result of a nosebleed through pressure. We've made inquiries, and that is a possibility that some people can bleed through the nose just as a result of the pressure that they're under. We really couldn't say how it got there. Suffice to say that it was Matthew's blood.
9 days after the murders, Matthew was attending the funeral of his mother, sister, and brother. It would take another 2 months before police would get the vital breakthrough and the last piece of the jigsaw they needed to complete their case. It had now been 2 months since Jennifer, Sarah and Adrian had been bludgeoned to death. Matthew DeGrucci, the prime suspect for their murders, was now spending time between the family home and that of his girlfriend. The police were still gathering their evidence, and lucky for them, a group of teenagers had an inquisitive nature.
I was about 16 at the time. A couple of mates lived right near this old quarry. It had a big dam in there, and this one particular day we were deciding to make a jump that went into the dam. We climbed up a bit higher onto this big ledge so we could actually see if we'd see how deep the water was, noticing something red in the water.
I'm not going in, man. Neither am I. You can. Stinks.
That's only water.
My mate walked into the water to grab the bag. He then started walking back towards us as we all met him to grab the bag off him, as we all wanted to know what was in there. And as we opened it, there was a couple of bits of carpet, looked like what was squashed paper, and a hammer, which we actually decided to keep the hammer, and threw the bag back in the water as we had no need for it.
The boys had found the bag only days after the murders. So when it came to the attention of the police 2 months later, they immediately drained the dam to find that evidence.
Detectives searched a dam at Woonona. It's alleged they found a number of items, many identified as having come from the DeGrucci household, including a video recorder, compact discs and a lady's purse with a photo licence of Jennifer DeGrucci.
The fact that we'd located the property was a big plus for us, because it certainly indicated to us that we were on the right path.
Earlier on, when Matthew had provided the list of items stolen from the house, it did appear a little bit odd to us that he was able to be so specific. Then when the items were found in the dam, it tended to confirm those suspicions, as the majority of items listed in fact turned up. There was a calculator which had the name A. DeGrucci, which is obviously Adrian's calculator, which was on the list as being stolen. There was also a lady's wallet with paperwork belonging to Jennifer DeGrucci. There's a video recorder and a number of other items, including a number of pieces of carpet which appeared as though they may well have been the carpet pieces that had been cut from the bedroom floor.
So did Matthew have time to kill 3 people, stage a robbery, cut the carpet, wipe the floor, drive to the dam to dispose of incriminating evidence, and then get to his girlfriend's by 11 p.m?
After discovery of the dam and the proximity of the dam to Alyssa's place, I then caused a couple of the members of my team to travel from the home of Matthew to the dam, then to Alyssa's. And what I got them to do was to travel at different speeds so I could see how long it would take just to satisfy ourselves that that was capable and possible to be done, which we did. It was certainly within the time frame.
Apart from the missing items from the house that were found in the dam and bag, another crucial piece of evidence existed.
There was a small plastic resealable bag located with the property, which appeared to contain a number of band-aids and what appeared to be small torn pieces of paper. It was visible on the paper that there was some sort of handwriting.
I think there were 13 pieces of paper in all that needed to be reconstructed. The document had been moist, it had been in water, and that some of the letters had actually bled into the fibres of the paper. When I was able to reconstruct the document, there were a number of words on that document, commencing with open gate, open blinds, mum, Sarah, Adrian, hit self with pole, cut somewhere with knife.
It appeared to us, once the note was put together, it was a checklist of things that needed to be done to make it appear that someone else had committed the crimes in the DeGrucci household. After the actual reconstruction of the documents, I was able to then compare the handwriting on that reconstructed document with known samples of Matthew DeGrucci's handwriting. There were about 12 points altogether that were fairly strong, similar features appearing between the two. I was of the opinion that it was probable that Matthew DeGrucci wrote the questioned writing, in that it was more likely than not that he did than he didn't. We arrested him and charged him with the murder of his mother, brother and sister.
7 Nightly News with Ross Simons.
Good evening. An 18-year-old Wollongong man has been refused bail on charges of killing his mother, brother and sister. Matthew DeGrucci was arrested after a 3-month investigation into the triple murder.
Matthew claims he spent the night at his girlfriend's and only discovered the bodies when he returned home in the morning. Crown Prosecutor Paul Conlon claims DNA evidence links Matthew to the murder scene.
I think the finding of that carpet fibre with blood on it, which ultimately proved to be the blood or consistent with the blood of Matthew DeGrucci, was very significant in this case when we came to look at the fact that pieces of carpet had been cut out of the main bedroom. I commented to the jury that the person responsible for these killings had left his calling card on that carpet. All of the facts and circumstances in that case ultimately pointed in one direction and one direction alone, and that was to the guilt of Matthew DeGrucci.
Magumi had left her residence on Friday, August the 3rd at 7:41 a.m. She headed to school, and the security video showed her leaving at 8 minutes past 3 in the afternoon.
Our initial information was that the last time that Magumi was seen alive was on the Friday afternoon down on the Rundle Mall having some coffee with some friends.
And the last person who she spoke to, she said
that she believed that Megami was going to Grenfell Street to catch the O-Bahn back to the place where she was living.
But it appeared Megumi never made it home on that Friday night.
I did phone her residence and ask if they could see if she was there. They said no, she wasn't in the room, and they said nothing had been touched. The bed hadn't been slept in, and also it had been the census weekend. I don't know if you remember when everybody was counted, and the census form was still there from the Friday night. So I was a bit concerned, and I had emailed the parents as well by then. Her mother had said that she never went anywhere without her teddy bear, and I knew then that there was something very wrong. I telephoned her boyfriend, her ex-boyfriend, to find out if he had heard from her, and he said no, he hadn't, and he had been worried about her as well because it was unusual for him not to hear from her. So I was quite convinced by that time that I needed to contact the police, which I did first thing on Thursday morning.
Megumi Suzuki was last seen by a friend at a city bus stop. Police began distributing missing person posters outside the Maya Centre late this afternoon.
At this stage, we didn't really know whether we had a homicide investigation or simply a missing person.
With posters, publicity and appeals in full swing, a man rang in with crucial evidence. He was a maintenance worker on the bus track that Megumi took home each weekday afternoon. And in the bushes nearby, he found her bag.
There was an identification card with her picture on there. There were numerous books with her name on it, and also a lot of her personal items.
I think the finding of her school books was the first step we had to say, I think that this is going to be a suspicious one. It raised our concern that Megumi may have met with foul play.
SES and mounted police scoured the scrub. The police helicopter was also called in.
There were a number of things actually missing from her possession, and one was her mobile phone. She also had a CD Walkman, which she always took with her, and that was also missing.
But what they did find was her credit card and a bus ticket. And those two items took her to one place, a BP service station in the opposite direction of her home.
So that alerted the investigators to the fact, well, why had she been travelling down there? Who might have she seen down there? And how might that information assist us in our investigation?
The BP console operator could pinpoint from his records what time and exactly what she purchased.
She had purchased a SIM card for her telephone. That alerted us to her mobile phone. We were able to then do some checks on the call charge records.
Megumi made 12 calls that night. The last, a text message, sent to her ex-boyfriend, who lived only a stone's throw away from the BP station.
It was fairly obvious now as to what was motivating Megumi to be at that particular location at that time. It was to go and see the boyfriend.
The last known sighting of 18-year-old Megumi Suzuki was at a BP station where she had bought a phone card. The records showed her last call was a text message to her ex-boyfriend.
We knew at that stage that he lived in the very near vicinity of the BP service station.
We actually spoke to him, and he was with friends at another location that night. I think it was the picture show.
He was very, very helpful in our investigation. He was distraught and was making every attempt to assist the police in trying to locate Megumi. It was about a week later that he contacted police with a piece of underclothing, in fact a pair of pants, that he suspected may have belonged to Megumi. So it was important to determine and confirm, were they Megumi's?
In her room at the student residence, detectives found underwear of similar styles.
The distinguishing factor that did stand out was the fact that all her underwear, or the majority of her underwear, were all matching sets.
The bra that matched those pants wasn't located.
but through subsequent forensic testing, we were able to get a DNA match and confirm positively that they were her clothes.
It was a worrying sign, more so as her pants had seemed to appear out of thin air, just like the note on the patrol car.
It was interesting as to how did those pants get there? Were they placed there? Did they blow there by the weather?
But with no real evidence that Magumi had met with foul play, all the police could do was keep asking the public for their help.
Police will begin targeting city nightclubs as part of their search for missing Japanese student Megumi Suzuki.
Police will hand out the posters this weekend to the city's dance and karaoke clubs, where Megumi was a regular.
Although we have grave fears, at this stage I think that there is still a glimmer of hope. We will continue to work on that basis.
Megumi's parents have flown from Tokyo. They've released a statement thanking police and appealing for more information to help find their daughter. We love our daughter very much. We pray that in the coming hours there will be some positive news.
And it appeared their prayers were answered.
The witness and his wife claims they were only metres away from the missing student outside the Aqaba Hotel at 11:30 this morning. A dozen police patrol cars converged on the area. Streets surrounding the Howard Florey Reserve were blocked off as the dog squad and uniformed patrols thoroughly checked homes and questioned residents.
This particular sighting was from a person who knew Megumi and was associated with her accommodation.
I actually spoke to him myself, and other detectives spoke to him. We were satisfied that he believed the person he saw was Megumi. And as a result of that, we thought, well, hello, yes, she's still alive.
I'm just glad that she's been sighted because she's not dead. That's the main thing. That's good news.
Good for her parents to know that she's okay and safe and sound. You wouldn't want to be in that position yourself.
The parents of missing teenager Megumi Suzuki have made an emotional plea to their daughter to come forward to police.
Megumi, もしこれを見ていたら早く出てきてほしい。
Megumi, if you saw this, please come forward as soon as possible. Father and mother can't sleep every day.
めぐみ、何も心配しなくていいから。
Don't worry about anything. Please come forward as soon as possible. Father and mother will protect you from now on. Please come forward.
But Megumi never made contact, and there were no more sightings.
At the one moment we thought that she might still be alive, then those hopes were dashed. It was a roller coaster ride to us. We can only try and imagine the roller coaster ride that the parents were on at that particular point in time.
8 weeks after Megumi had gone missing, her photo was put onto a new police website that had just been developed.
And on that same website, we were able to place the unsolved murder of Maya Jakic.
The police are also making a new bid to solve the murder of 30-year-old Maya Jakic, whose body was found over 2 years ago. Detectives have turned to the internet, trying to identify the man who made 2 emergency calls on the night of her murder.
Yeah, just walked past the old Paynham police station. There seems to be a body of some sort in the bushes there.
People could dial onto the internet and listen to that call from indeed anywhere in Australia or perhaps anywhere in the world. So that wider exposure we thought was both innovative and critical in trying to get that breakthrough that we needed.
The strategy would work. Police were about to find out the long-needed identity of the caller and Maya's killer.
I listened to it about half a dozen times. I closed my eyes and listened to it, and I could see Mark talking to me.
Police knew that the killer of Maya Jakic was most likely the same person who made 2 emergency calls on the night that Maya was murdered. Who he was had eluded them. That was until the internet pulled him into its web.
The following is a taped voice of a male person who contacted police and ambulance 000 facilities.
And one particular person heard his voice.
1999. Police are seeking your assistance to identify the caller.
I logged on and found the tape and listened to it, and listened to it, and listened to it. And I listened to it about half a dozen times. I closed my eyes and listened to it.
Yeah, just walked past the old Paynham police station. There seems to be a body.
And I was 90% sure that it was my brother. Perhaps Mark was involved with this crime that seemed rather out of character for Mark. He'd never been violent as far as I knew. So I listened to the tape again. And I remember I walked up the passageway a little bit and closed my eyes so there was some distance from the voice.
I don't know, I can vaguely see him. He's got a flashlight flashing around the place.
Inside or?
In around the place.
And I could see Mark talking to me when I could hear that voice. So I sort of decided then that I had to ring Crime Stoppers. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It's, there's no damage done. But if I'm right, well, they need to know about it.
Stephen Rust said that he'd been away for a number of years and had just come back. He's seen the publicity, he heard the voice.
Yeah, there's someone hanging around the old Paynham police station.
And I could see the dilemma he was going through, because here he was identifying the voice as being that of his brother, Mark Rust.
Mark Rust was certainly known to us. We had his name in our files for more minor sexual offences.
It was a rather sickening feeling to realise that perhaps Mark had stepped over the line because he'd been in trouble for such a long time with the police and going to jail and parole. The family knew that he was building up and getting worse each time, and that eventually he would do something really terrible and end up in jail for the rest of his life. But at the same time, we'd always hoped that, you know, he wouldn't go that way. So when it was fairly certain that it was Mark who was involved, it was a nasty feeling. It left a very unpleasant taste.
While the police were convinced the 000 caller was Mark Rust, it wasn't enough to make an arrest. They would also need to prove that the note left on the patrol car was his handiwork. And Stephen Rust had provided them with a letter from his brother for comparison.
Our task was to look at the handwriting and see if it had been written by the person. One of the more outstanding features was the double cross on the T, which was a feature of both the specimen letter and the question note. Another feature was the way that the letters were spaced in the word, for example, in the word good. They were very tight and overlapping. And all of the words, particularly where they could be directly compared, words like the and of, and these were very similar in their appearance. In general, every single letter, every single word that could be directly compared showed very close similarities in both their form and in their appearance. I was convinced that the same person had written both the letter that was found on the patrol car and the specimen letter.
So after assessing all of the evidence, we were satisfied that we had a reasonable case, and as a consequence of that, the detectives went out and made the arrest.
A 37-year-old man has been arrested and charged with the murder of Maya Jakic 2 years after she died.
Late yesterday afternoon in Port Augusta, detectives arrested and charged a man.
They had found Mark in jail. His minor sexual offences had progressed to rape, and he was currently on remand in a prison some 300 kilometres away from where Maya was murdered.
Police don't believe there was any relationship between Miss Jakic and the accused. Her parents in Croatia have been contacted by detectives and say they're very pleased about the arrest.
Shortly after Mark Rust was charged and went back to the prison at Port Augusta, he obviously needed someone to confide in because he was probably shocked that he was eventually arrested. This resulted in an informant contacting us who passed on some very valuable information.
Mark had remained silent when he had been questioned and then charged with Maya's murder. It was a different story back at the prison.
The informant said that Mark had told him that he saw a tall, blonde girl walking along Paynham Road. He spoke to her. A struggle ensued, and he pulled her into the bushes where he had sex with her and he eventually ended up strangling her.
But it was what the informant told the police next that was totally unexpected.
As a result, we had to move very quickly and make a search of Mark Rust's cell and his belongings.
What they were looking for, and found, was a CD player. A CD player similar in shape and colour to the one that missing school student Megumi Suzuki had with her on the day she disappeared.
We contacted the mother in Japan, and she was in a situation where she could produce all the relevant document dating back and tracing that sale with the serial number to her and Megumi in Japan.
Of course, finding Rust in possession of some of Megumi's property didn't in itself mean that he'd committed the murder. So whilst it was an important part, there was still a lot more work to be done by the team of investigators.
37-year-old Mark Rust had been arrested and charged with the murder of Maya Djakic. His brother had identified his voice as that of the 000 caller, and a sample of his writing matched exactly that of the note left on the police car. Now Mark was a suspect in the murder of 18-year-old Megumi Suzuki. Her CD Walkman had been found in his cell after an informant contacted the police.
The informant also said in relation to Suzuki that he approached her. He had sex with her, and he said to her, "Don't look at me, whatever you do." She looked at him, saw his face, and as a result he attempted to strangle her. And then he actually killed her by hitting her on the head with a rock. We were also told that Megumi had been murdered on a vacant paddock and that he had burnt clothing or something there. As a result of the information, we went back to the BP service station. Directly opposite was a vacant block of land. We made a search of the vacant block of land and we found the seat of a fire.
The fire brigade was contacted. They confirmed they had put out a small fire on that vacant lot on the very night Megumi had disappeared.
Near the fire we found a rock which could possibly have been used in the offence. We found bits of burnt clothing and arm bracelets, and we knew that these were jewellery worn by Megumi Suzuki.
But Megumi's body had yet to be found. The only clue from the informant was that Mark Rust had dumped her into an industrial bin.
We combed the area based on some directions that were provided, and we did in fact find a bin at the rear of some premises on Goodwood Road.
The circumstantial evidence against Mark Rust was stacking up. But before they could make an arrest, the investigators needed to be absolutely sure that this was the bin where Mark had placed Megumi after he killed her. And they turned to the Rust family for help.
This must have been an enormous dilemma for them to assist the police, in effect, to establish and clarify whether Mark Rust was responsible. Nevertheless, they did provide that assistance, and they were able to confirm that the waste bin had a hippo on the side. The bin that we were looking at had similar markings, and that was the final lead that we needed to satisfy that we had a reasonable case to arrest Rust.
I was shocked about the Maya Djakic thing because it just came out of the blue and really sort of, you know, knocked the wind out of our sails. And then when Jerry told us about Megumi Suzuki, it just fitted together very nicely with what Mark had been doing. So I sort of believed it pretty much straight away.
Megumi's body hasn't been found, but it's understood it may have been dumped in an industrial bin and later at the Wingfield rubbish tip.
We have been praying for our daughter to be alive under any circumstances for the last 3 months. But this week we received the saddest news we could have had.
When they arrived out in Australia, Jerry Feltus took them down to the rubbish dump. And I think that that was obviously a very, very traumatic moment for the parents to sit on the side of a rubbish tip, knowing that somewhere amongst literally hundreds of tonnes of rubbish there was the body of your daughter. So we certainly felt obligated to try and do everything possible to recover Megumi's body, and that was the next challenge for us.
But first, the grisly search for the murdered Japanese student, 18-year-old Megumi Suzuki, has begun at a Wingfield landfill site.
Megumi was dumped at the site nearly 4 months before, so numerous layers of baled rubbish were discarded until the level they believed she would be in was located. Then those bales were broken apart and searched.
We had to go through every bale. We were looking for things that related back to a particular date. We had to go through newspapers, invoices, everything with dates on it to ensure that we were in the correct area and we weren't moving out of it. You were going through trying to find things which kept you on track.
And after 11 days, and after removing tens of thousands of tonnes of rubbish, they were in the exact spot, and Megumi's body was found.
There was a mixture of relief and sorrow to think that someone could meet such an untimely death in the way that Megumi was murdered, and then to have a body dumped in the location that it was dumped was absolutely horrific.
The amazing thing about finding the body of Megumi Suzuki is that she still had her boots on, she still had clothing on, and the bra that she was wearing was an identical match to the pants which her ex-boyfriend had found in the laneway months earlier near the vacant block of land.
We relieved that our daughter was found, thanks to the efforts of everyone involved in her search. We realised it was a very difficult task considering the circumstances. It is no exaggeration to say it was a miracle to find her so quickly.
But Rust's confession to murdering Megumi didn't come quickly. He maintained his innocence, as he did for the murder of Maya Jakic. Then, exactly 1 year after Megumi's body was found, he changed his plea.
There's been a shock development in the murder of Japanese student Megumi Suzuki. A 37-year-old man from the northeastern suburbs has pleaded guilty.
I know that you've done this. You know you've done it, and you need to put your hand up for it so that there's not a big court case. These poor families aren't dragged through this muck, and we can all get over it as best we can and bring some closure to everyone's life.
6 months later, Mark Rust also admitted to the murder of Maya Jakic on the 12th of April 1999.
The families of 2 young women brutally murdered by a homicidal predator have given harrowing accounts of the loss of their loved ones.
On behalf of the families, friends gave heartbreaking accounts of how the murders have totally devastated dozens of lives. Fusei Simpson described the Suzuki family's anguish, quoting Megumi's mother, "It makes me insane when I think of her being treated like rubbish." Ida Gregov related the thoughts of Maya's mother, Yagoda. Why would anyone want to kill Maya like an innocent bird and cover her with branches and cover his dirty crime?
I done it with all my heart. And I did call Maya's mum and I said, this is what I done. I actually spoke on your behalf. And I saw the killer. And it's done, I said, it's finished.
Mark Rust was sentenced to life in jail without parole for both murders. The judge ruled that the 39-year-old was incapable of controlling his sexual urges and would be detained until further order.
You ask yourself, why has he done that? How could he have done that? Because we all grew up together in the same house. It's emotionally quite devastating to realise that someone so close to you in your immediate family can commit such a crime. It's really, it's devastating. It's I don't know. I can't really find the words to describe just how bad it makes you feel. It's a dreadful feeling.
The Suzuki family are still very distressed. They are really feeling it at the moment because they had great expectations for their daughter.